We clap at the same time.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Great.
Welcome to YALLWrite and our special masterclass with the amazing Victoria Aveyard.
And the amazing Soman Chainani.
We were super lucky because we didn't just get paired randomly. We actually like each other. And we also share
all the others hate each other.
We also share the same publisher. We both publish with HarperCollins, and we just came off working on a collab just for the fans called Red School that we had the best time with. So Victoria, tell us a little bit about what we're talking about today. Our subject is fan service.
Fan service. So something Soman and I also share is we both have a background in film. We both studied that in college. And one thing you learn when you're learning to write for the screen is you have to be so aware of your audience. And that's something Soman and I both carried with us into publishing, and particularly writing for middle grade and young adult, is being aware of our audiences. And that kind of bloomed into us knowing our readers want more from us. Our readers also have a lot of crossover. How can we service that? And so that's where Red School came from. But then in terms of craft, thinking about what your audience wants is so important. And I think it really influences both of us, even when we're writing our separate projects.
100%. So I thought we'd maybe divide it into a few areas to kind of give people a chance to think about fan service in different ways. So maybe the first thing we can talk about is we're both technically debut series writers. Like, we opened with a series. And I think a lot of writers come in, and the question I often ask is like, oh, how did you know your series was going to be a success? Or what did you do to make it?
How did you know it was going to be a series?
Yes, all those things. And like God forbid you're locked into a deal where you're writing a second and third book for a first book that didn't do well, all these sort of questions. So I thought maybe we talk about kind of what we did, not just in the writing of our series, but what we did off the page to support our own series. So maybe tell us first, like, when you were done with Red Queen, what did you do before publication to make sure it had the best possible chance?
I was really lucky because I was a lead title. So HarperCollins was very, very supportive of me and made sure that I had the best foundation possible. Past a certain point, you can only do so much, and it does become word of mouth, people liking the book, people passing the book on. But up until publication, we were, doing outreach on social media. Social media was a big thing. I debuted in 2015. And I was 24 years old at the time. And that really benefited me because I was using Twitter and Instagram and Facebook in ways, not so much Facebook, but in ways that were organic to me. So it felt natural. And I know a lot of people struggle with creating a sort of persona or whatever on social media that feels real and authentic and not just like, buy my books. So I had a little bit of a leg up there. And
on that question, when you first came in, because obviously when you started, you had no followers, you're just tweeting into
the void. Well, there was when I first got represented, that was when I first started kind of dipping my toes into the publishing sphere that I didn't know really existed on social media. And once I started interacting with Susie, my agent, on Twitter, when she tweeted like, hey guys, here's my new author that I've just signed, and I started reaching out and chit-chatting with people. That was the first sort of building of a little bit of a community. And then, of course, when the book comes out, you have readers come into the mix. So your circle just kind of gets bigger.
But I think it's also different with YA, because I think the audience is on social media. Right. So in a lot of ways, if you look at the successful YA authors that I think of, everybody has a significant social media presence. Where I think with middle grade, it's a little trickier. It's a little trickier because, even if you are a middle grade author, your publisher is going to be like, oh, have a big online presence, but your audience isn't really on.
No, and they're not allowed to be on Instagram until they're 13. I mean, it doesn't mean they're not there, but I can't speak to it. You obviously can, but it's obviously not as important. I know now a lot of publishers like to have a bigger following for their authors. It's not a requirement. It's not like oh, we would have bought your book, but you don't have this many followers. If the book is good, the book is good.
Right.
But it does behoove you to pay attention to that and engage with it if it's something you want to do and it's something you're good at and you want to give yourself that much more push.
I think it also depends on I think you also have to think about who is your book really for. I think in your case, like you look at Red Queen, it isn't just for teenagers, but adults can read it. And we know adults read it because we saw a picture of Daisy Ridley reading few years ago. So I think for School for Good and Evil, I knew that in the beginning it was going to be mainly for kids, but as the books went on, they were going to get older and older in sort of the Harry Potter vein, but even more so that by the time you got to book 5 and 6, they were going to almost feel very heavy young adult, you know? So I sort of played the long game, I think, with social media, knowing that I wasn't going to have a big following at first, but as kids got older with it, it was going to exponentially rise. And so I almost set a target for myself of being like, all right, I wanted to get to 20, which took like, on Instagram at least, 20,000 followers, which took like 3 years, but then it doubled every year.
Right.
And because the kids were getting older and older. And
they were growing with you too. And so did you have some sort of master schedule where you've marked out and you've got your chart and your graph?
No, I just sort of looked by the end of the year, I wanted to be at 40. This year, at the end of the year, I want to be at 60. So it's like, you just sort of look at like, can you double or like exponentially kind of grow? I mean, I think the other thing is that you have to also think about like what you're serving on your social media. Like we both know examples and we'll talk about it at some point without naming names of bad social media. And so just what is your overall strategy? Like, how do you think about what to post in terms of just on social media? Like, is it a thought process or is it just, you really are just posting what's happening in your life at any given moment?
I definitely will not post anything that I naturally wouldn't post. Obviously there's stuff where you're saying, oh, there's a sale today. I have to say this book is now $2.99. And there's a way to do that that's very dry. And there's a way to do that is more natural to you. And obviously you try to shoot for that first one, but sometimes you're out and about and you just think, all right, I just got to write this thing. And that's okay, so long as that's not all you're doing.
Well, here's what's funny about that point. I think it's different. And this is such a controversial thing to say, but I think it's different for a boy and a girl.
Oh, yeah.
On the sales, because I can be super aggressive about promotion. I think in a way that a female can't.
Well, we're also, and as so many people have talked about this so much more eloquently than me, but women are socialized to, you know, take up less space and make ourselves smaller and not sing our own praises and not be proud of ourselves, which there's definitely a line. There's definitely being humble and having class about something, and then there's being really in a person's face about it. I haven't found the middle ground of that yet. But I think we need to, you know, give ourselves accolades when we can. What we're doing is incredible. I sometimes come back to, I cannot believe I'm being paid to do what I do. I feel like a kid who grew up wanting to be an astronaut, and now I've been to the moon 5 times, and all you want to do is just keep going back.
Yes.
So you'll do anything to make that happen.
But do you think of social media as a way to give insight, a window into your life, or is it? So here's my dilemma, at least for School for Good and Evil, which is primarily a middle grade series and a younger audience series. If I post anything about my life or me as a person, the interest level plummets.
Really?
Because middle grade, I think in middle grade, the book is the thing. If I die, no one cares. They just care about when the next School for Good and Evil book is coming out. And I think in YA, it's a cult.
Let's be honest, none of them care if we die.
I don't think that's true. I think there's a cult of the author in YA.
There's definitely a cult of the author, and I think there is a blurred line, especially right now, that social media enables, because people can just reach out and essentially touch you, and you can reach back, but the rules are different. So they can kind of say whatever they want to you, and you have to, you know, look at your position and say, all right, I can't respond, or I can't engage, or yes, I do want to engage with them. What they're saying is really nice, and this is great to talk to them about, but like, is that overstepping a line? I don't know. The rules are so fluid and they keep constantly changing. I mean, just thinking about 5 years ago, the way social media was compared to today. When are you going to make a TikTok?
Well, TikTok and also just the personal interactions. Like
Mhm.
I feel
They're
like
very overwhelming. You do hit a point where you think you're like, I can't spend hours of my day doing this, and you have to prioritize.
if you had to think off the top of your head, could you name, I mean, don't do it now, obviously, but in your head, could you think of your top 10 biggest fans by username on Instagram? Because I think I could.
Maybe not by name, but by picture. I'm better with pictures than names. But if I were to see, the little Twitter headline or the Instagram handle, yeah, I could probably be like, yep, I know them. I recognize them. It does. You do have people who you kind of realize, oh yeah, they're a super fan, and that's awesome, and I cannot believe that that person exists and wants more of what I'm giving. And then I have the same people who have, been very mean to me, and not in like a book critique way, because that's all fine, but like a personal life kind of thing. I got a really nice one today. Yeah, those are interesting. But you remember those too, or at least I do, because I carry grudges.
It's worth talking about because I think a lot of people don't know that that's another part of
But we are so dehumanized by social media. And when I say we, I mean authors, writers, creators, actors, basically anyone who is creating content that someone else can then think they own. It's so strange.
And also I think, like, for instance, I've had a couple of times where there'll be a campaign against the books, like an attempt to cancel the books for whatever reason. And I think the first time it happened, I tried to like address it in some shape, way, or form. And I think I had to kind of get my mind around the fact of I wrote the books, therefore I put them out in the world, and now they are a child going to school, growing up, and they're going to get bullied at times. They're going to have conflicts. They're going to have things, but that is their problem to deal with. So I learned that like my work is done once in a way I put out the books, and I'm going to try to cultivate a relationship with the fans and things, but I cannot litigate every issue that is brought before me.
That's a really good way to put it. And you're right. You put something out there in the world, and it's going to hit every single person differently. I have such a detached way about me between myself and my work. I've heard everything about Red Queen, and at this point I'm like, okay, thanks for reading. That's all I got from that, and I hope you find something you do enjoy, and I'm glad you are a reader, because at a base level that makes you better than most people.
Well, that's what I thought was also really interesting about Red School, which all of you should order from redschool.com if there's copies left, which might not be, because
copies are going like hotcakes.
Poor June, who is our co-writer on it, had to deal with getting out thousands and thousands of copies to the people who ordered that many.
That was the forklift he had to rent.
He had to rent a forklift, and he told me, he was like, I'm like, you need to send 25 copies to Victoria. He's like, I sent our sample copy to Istanbul.
Oh my God. No, it's not even. My dad keeps saying like, so when am I going to read this thing? I haven't seen it, Victoria. And he gets everything. So
anyway, it's going very quickly. So redschool.com is where you want to go if you want to get one. But when we were going to do one, I think the only thing that was in our way, because everything told us we should do it. It was a fun idea. We wanted to work together. We wanted to do something graphic. We wanted to do something for the fans. We wanted to make it free. I think the only hesitation was, are we ready to like wade into the idea?
Yeah, that was the only thing. And obviously there's always going to be backlash. There's always going to be critique, whether it's really good critique or critique that you just kind of are like, no, that's not
even correct. If you give something out for free that costs thousands and thousands of dollars to make of our own money.
That was the thing I really enjoyed, was knowing that we were doing this and offering a free option. I was really happy when we both decided that was what we wanted to do.
And because I think that was also like something that I don't think happens very often. And I think that was our kind of goal, was to say, we appreciate.
That's the whole thing too. No other authors have really done something like this, where they have, a sanctioned crossover that the authors themselves have done, at least not in my knowledge in the past few years. And we were really excited to kind of be the newbies doing that.
Disruptive, I think, because in the sense of, we had never seen our characters portrayed. And also I think we wanted to give the artist a lot of free reign. So we didn't want to come in and be like, there was a way to do this where we could have taken 5 years, made it exactly 100% what we like, every character exactly what we wanted. But I think we almost wanted to see, if in a lot of ways, we wanted to see like an authorized fan fiction. You know what I mean? Like,
I can't speak to you, but my background is a lot of fan fiction in it, and I definitely got those vibes of the wish fulfillment and sort of the heightened emotions and just the excitement of having this sandbox and being able to know where the storyline goes for each of these worlds and being like, no, I'm going to go over to this room and explore
Yes, yes,
for a
yes.
little while and
I don't
just have
know,
fun
like
with it.
bound, like just being able to be like, working with a great artist and working with June and being able to be like, okay, look, let's move stuff around and then we'll create boundaries, right? So like Joel was like, there
It's
has
so
to be
cool.
a shirtless wrestling contest between Tedros and Cal. And both you and I are like, okay. And so then we're seeing the frames and we're like, okay, like trying to create
The body hair discussion,
body.
those are some emails.
And also like the idea of like Tedros being so ripped. And I was just like, look, this is his vision, right? Like
Well,
this is
that goes back to us both being having film experience. Is the thing that divides publishing and writing for screen or television is the collaborative nature of it. And for the most part, we've been working where it's entirely us, and now you're working on the School for Good and Evil movie, so you're getting that collaboration, and you get to see someone else's interpretation of something that only exists in your brain. It's really, really cool.
Well, I think the other thing that we appreciate, well, on the School for Good and Evil movie is one thing because the director is Paul Feig, who's like one of the top directors in Hollywood. So therefore you have to step back and if you come in hot being like, no, this is how it should be, then no one's gonna listen to you, and B, you're wasting an opportunity to have an amazing director have his interpretation. As long as the thing fulfills the spirit of the books, which it does, I leave that on its own. But I think in our case, because we come from film, we also realize that part of servicing fans is giving them access to the story in new ways, right? And I think you have to trust talented people, to work on stuff. So like, how have you dealt with, so like with Joel, for instance, I think both of us, we loved the fact that he spent 7 months on Red School. Like this was one of his first big projects that he got to dive into. And we love the idea of someone with so much energy. And so we gave him a lot of latitude, like to really go for it. How have you worked with artists in the past and people operating in the Red Queen world so that you give them, I know you just did something even for ModCloth, like how do you create those bounds between what you need and what you want to give fans?
My closest experience would probably be fan artists who have stood out to us and we know, oh, we would like to use this piece of art that you've made, or we'd like to commission something for you. But this, to the same vein, you don't want to get too nitpicky. You don't want to affect their art and their vision. It is a collaboration. If I could draw, I would just do it myself if I wanted it to be the definitive. I think there's some beauty in allowing small interpretations and changes, and I like that you get to see the stamp that every other person puts on it. I think what really helped me, because looking back, when we were talking about giving readers more once your books created this place where they wanted more, my first experience with that was Cruel Crown, which came out in between Red Queen and Glass Sword, when it was clear Red Queen was doing really well and had an audience that wanted more and didn't want to wait for the next book to come out. And that was an experience that I really love those stories, but oh my God, I would never do that to myself again, because it was very much built for the schedule and affected by business decisions, not so much creative decisions.
Got it. Yeah.
And then getting to do this, we weren't under the gun. I'd had some distance from the story, so there was a little more like relaxation of allowing, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can change that. Yeah, this person would say this. And you have those parameters where you're like, no, I know this character. This character would not do that. This character would do that.
Yes. And
but
also,
as for you didn't have the distance I had. Was that an experience?
I think because it was non-canon in a way, I think that was the key, the ability to be like, in a lot of ways, like I said, it's like a crossover fan fiction that we're authorizing. So it feels like, it was almost like a mini version of what JKR did with Cursed Child on stage, where it's just like, let's play around and see.
I still haven't read that or seen it or what.
I haven't seen it, but like, it does feel a little fan fiction-y.
Yeah, I think that was my feeling, as I was like, I'm good.
I think the difference with this was because we were there from the beginning, but it's graphic. And so when it's graphic, these are characters that everyone knows. And so just the graphic nature of throwing them together, I think was something no one had ever really done before. I think if we had written like a crossover fan fiction in prose,
yeah, it wouldn't have been as exciting. And I also don't think you and I would have been able to do that.
we wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been, it wasn't, we never even thought about it that way. I mean, the interesting thing to think about how it all came about was because you and I were supposed to go on tour to the Philippines.
Yes.
And Philippines and Malaysia, we were going to do an Asia, Singapore, a big Asia tour pre-COVID. And
yeah, this past March.
and we were thinking about, I think the reason we thought of it was because those audiences, and I'm sure there's some watching now, are insane. They are the most
the overseas audiences that we have, and they're very similar. You know, the countries that are the ones that are very, very vocal and extremely passionate and always chiming in and always reminding you like, hey, we want more. We're so excited.
That's it. So
we have the exact same.
Yes, and we wanted to give them, we thought every time we sign someone's book in one of those countries when we're on tour, we're going to hand out a 6-page like little crossover color.
And this idea came to us when we were in Brazil. So it was thinking about the Brazilian fans, knowing what crossover we had and were experiencing in the moment, and then knowing we were hopefully going to do an Asia tour. So
yes.
The Asian, it was very it almost feels like they were with us a little bit in our brains of what they would want from those tours.
100%. And also I think you and I had so much fun in Brazil that we were like, let's find a way to keep our sort of like, you know, having fun on the road somehow. And I think when the tour was canceled, I think we didn't want to let go of the idea. And so luckily when I found Joel was just like, he was willing to go with whatever the story accommodated. So I think, you know, when June and us were like working on the story, we thought maybe 24 pages, 16 pages, and then it ended up being 98, I think.
June came up with such great ideas, and we should probably talk about how once we knew we wanted to do this, what the actual infrastructure was.
I think
we're both working on stuff that we're on deadline and schedules for. So we couldn't, you know, pump the brakes on everything and then dive in the way we would with one of our contracted books.
I think also the perspective wouldn't have worked necessarily because I was off of series. You were a little distant from your series. I think if one of us had to take the lead on it, we would have been in trouble, I think. Whereas like, you know, June Sekia, who was our co-writer on it, came with a bunch of concepts that were hilarious. Like one of them was like
one day maybe we'll do the other ones. They were really good.
It was an Olympics one.
Yes.
Characters compete in Olympics, which I could easily read 98 pages about an Olympics between the two worlds that doesn't really have much conflict.
We should do a coffee shop AU one. People would go nuts.
And so, you know, but I think ultimately we realized we wanted something. We knew it was going to be around Halloween. We wanted something scarier.
Yeah. And have those really great climactic moments and set pieces that we both love to write, and we're really excited to get visually on the page.
And so that's when I think he started thinking about the idea of the Red School, and we started putting all the characters together and looking at the relationships and kind of went from there, you know. I think the other question I was going to ask you was, you know, once, like now that you're done with the series and on to something else, how do you think about sort of the fandom for Red Queen as people keep writing fan fiction and doing things? Do you think of it as there's no limits left? Like, do you ever dip back in to look at what people are doing, or do you really feel like you've moved on?
I see things that are sent to me on Twitter, especially. I don't so much look at tagged things on Instagram because sometimes they're not nice, and you know what? I don't need it, and they don't want me there either. So I think it's better. You can't really tell from the photos once you click on something if it's going to be for you or not. But the thing I really think about is how to maintain this readership for a series and bring them to the next series. And I think that's a challenge that almost all of us face. I mean,
super difficult.
Scary to think they might not come with me and they don't want this new thing. And you always want to improve and do better and expand and grow your tent essentially. So it's a fear. I definitely try to think about sort of a natural fade from Red Queen to Realmbreaker, my new series, and kind of pulling people along based on what they liked in Red Queen that I know I have in Realmbreaker, or things they didn't like in Red Queen that I'm now exploring in a different way in Realmbreaker. And I also think social media, at least for YA, and I think more so, as you were saying, for female authors, people want to feel like they're connected to us, like they know us. More of a friendship versus an author audience distant relationship. And I personally just love, tours of office spaces or what your desk looks like or what your schedule is for the day, because that sort of stuff makes me happy. So I try to give that back a little bit, because I think, well, someone else might like it too, because if I'm looking for it, someone else is.
Which is funny because I think as a boy, like I couldn't do any of that stuff. Like, so what do I post? I post like workout videos.
You do. And you know what? People like your workout videos. I don't know.
You have, I think at the end of the day, you have to think about like, so this is what I was going to ask. Like, I think one of the reason people are probably watching this is like, they probably want to be writers and they're thinking like, well, how do I create a fan base? Like, how do I get a fan base,
I definitely get this question a lot, and I'm sure you do too, talking about, is social media important? How do you use your social media to help your career? And do you have to have it?
So I think so this is interesting because I think they're different for different audiences. So I think for young adult, you really do, and I think you can speak a little more to like how someone can create their social media. For middle grade, my secret to creating a fan base was to be on the road. I became like an old school Indian salesman. Like I did my first 2 years. I did it.
That's middle grade. That's the name of the game of the school. That's where you're going to find the kids.
At least 120 school visits each of those first 2 years, and going in there and pounding the pavement and talking to kids and creating. So you have your social media brand kind of identity online. Mine was kind of in person. So mine was kind of the renegade rebel of break the rules, be a little evil, like, sort of the Sophie character from School for Good and Evil. I sort of took that into schools, and that became kind of the ethos. And it shows up in my social media presence a little bit, but I feel like to me, the in-person is where I really kind of became accessible to fans, How about you? So like, what would you tell people who are trying to create their own social media presence online?
Number one, it has to be organic to you. If it's not something you wouldn't naturally think in your brain, that you aren't naturally comfortable with, don't do it. Also, you also do have to be careful what you say, and know that everything you say, someone could like screenshot or keep or bring up, and just be aware of that. And you know what? If you're passionate about something, do that, even if you think no one's going to care. I used to tweet about football a lot, and I was one of like 3 people in the YA sphere who watched football and would tweet about it. And I was like, oh man, I must sound like such a Looney Tune to everybody. And people were like, no, this is cool. It's something that's you. So kind of make your weirdness your strength, because someone else will respond to it.
And what are things we see that...
I will say TikTok also, I'm really enjoying it. It's addictive as hell. And I have found there is an entirely different and younger group of people on there who you're not reaching on Twitter, you're not reaching on Instagram, and you're not reaching in Facebook. Book Talk is this whole community on its own, and it's really fun and interesting and original, and the things they're doing, talking about our books, spreading the word about our books, and just interacting, it's really cool. And it is sort of a way for people to connect without being in the same room, which especially right now is pretty good.
But I think also on TikTok, there is this kind of like, I think, hyper awareness of they're younger. And so therefore, like, I don't know how much they want to see of us in a way.
Yeah,
like
I've gotten some really good interactions on answering questions about publishing and craft, which you might not think, 14, 15-year-olds want to know about this, but they do. They're very interested. I also have gotten some good movement on just tracking my path as a writer and how I became a writer. And because you're doing it in these 60-second bite-sized videos as opposed to a 20-minute YouTube blog, it works. It just works for them.
Yeah, I think TikTok is one of the things that I put that on my 2021 list.
It's tough. I mean, it's hard to learn. I definitely am feeling my age, but it also tells me what I should buy on Amazon. So
it'd be like, am I supposed to be doing TikTok dances, or am I supposed to be like...
No one will ever see me do a TikTok dance.
But this is what I mean. It's a little tricky. And I thought maybe we'd last end by just saying what's next for us, so that people can look for whatever.
Good segue.
So tell us a little bit about Realmbreaker, when it's coming, what it's about.
Okay. So Realmbreaker is my new young adult series. It's going to be a trilogy. The first installment, Realmbreaker, comes out on May 4th, 2021. We'll see what state the world is in by then. But it is basically the story that I wanted when I was 15 years old. And the whole idea of it came out of, I was thinking about, what if the Fellowship of the Ring went out on their adventure and their mission, and in the first week they get killed? Who is the JV team? Who are the people who step up once the heroes are all dead? I love playing with tropes. I did it a lot in Red Queen, and that's how this book starts, with that ultimate fantasy adventure trope, and we lose it. And I just had a great time writing it. I loved making fun of the genre and then expanding on things that I loved, and just, oh my God, I felt like I was a kid in a candy store.
I can't wait to read it. Oh my God, how exciting.
Yeah.
So that's coming up. We've got Red School, that's out now. And then I have my next book coming out next September. And in January, I will announce what that is, as well as like all the next projects.
I've seen a cover.
Yes, you have seen a cover. But all I can tell you is it's going to get me in a lot of trouble.
Promise.
I love it. That's why, like, anytime, I should put this on my Twitter as a pinned tweet. Like, if you try to come to cancel me for anything, you are just proving my point.
Okay. I love it.
Oh God, this was so fun, and time always goes so fast.
I know. I feel like I got to go look at CNN again and see if anything's happened.
Oh God. But thanks guys for joining us. And now I think we're going to segue to a live Q&A, because this theoretically is recorded. So we'll be wearing different clothes. All right. See you guys in a second.
Bye.
Perfect. That was so much fun.
That was shit.
Someone forgot to edit the end. That was the greatest thing that has ever been seen in the history of programming.
That was pure. That was proof that we like each other.
And now we're here, and we have a new president. That was like, a lot was happening that week. My God. Okay, we only have like 10 minutes or like 12 minutes. So and you have no idea how many questions are being sent. So cool. I'm just going to pick ones I like. There's no rhyme or reason. I'm just going, okay. And they're totally out of order.
Question doesn't get asked.
Let's see. How do you deal with not taking hate to heart? Do you go first?
Yeah, sure. I went to film school, and a lot of that was workshop writing. So you had to get a thick skin really, really quickly. I also look at criticism, at least good criticism, as someone saying, like, I care. And that really helps me. And I'm good at identifying what is useful criticism and what I just can't deal with and need to let go out of my brain.
See, I feel like I grew up loving Madonna, and I felt like all of Madonna's attention was negative attention. So to me, like, when people like have hate, I think, oh, I'm famous. I'm Madonna.
I like that.
So like it only makes me feel better and happier with myself. I think there was one time ever that I tried to address a negative reaction to something and realized that there's no point. It's better to just enjoy the negative reaction. Okay, this is a good one. Which are the limits you set to interact with fans in social media and share your own life? What are your boundaries?
For me, at least, I have chosen that for the most part, I'm only going to respond on Twitter. And it used to be Tumblr, but the infrastructure was too clunky. Twitter, I still don't really like. I'm trying to find a different way, but I think keeping the place where you respond and interact to like one has been very helpful for me. I know people DM on Instagram, but that one's tough. Again, the infrastructure is not good. Yeah, that's my singular boundary when it comes to where I share and what I share.
But I feel like you share a lot more of your like personal life than I will. Like I'm quite like my dating life is completely away from social media. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's things there's just been getting to the place where it's like, oh, I would be lying if I said I did this thing and someone wasn't there, that kind of thing. So I'm not exactly saying like we went out on our 13th date tonight, that kind of thing. But just, as people organically come in and out of your lives, they're included and they're not. And hopefully no one's like tracking a chart.
Well, if they did with mine, it would be a very long chart. Okay, so As you know, I was gonna say, you know everything, so it's fine. How do you balance your social media presence and finding enough time to write? Because I think this actually is tricky. How do you do it? Because you're actually really good at like getting content uploaded all the time.
I now have to prioritize it. Like I write it in my planner. Today I need to do a TikTok and I identified a question I want to answer, or like today I need to post this Instagram and ask for questions for my newsletter. And once you break it down that way and make it part of the professional business, it's a lot easier. And I think you take it more seriously.
I'm the opposite. I still can't do that. I just do it where like it just like will come to my like it's almost instinctive. I'll find myself picking up my phone and posting something without even realizing I've done it. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's almost unconscious kind of.
Oh
You
yeah.
know.
And there's absolutely, I'm like, oh, this picture of Indy's cute. I'm going to post it. This has no motive.
I feel like Indy, if Indy had her own account, would completely object to her portrayal and have a completely different version of the story.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's see. There's so many things. Okay. On Red School, they were saying how hard was it to imagine characters being in the same room without it feeling forced?
I
It
don't know.
didn't
I
seem
think
that forced. Yeah.
fan fiction background really helped. And we both know these characters so well. So we can kind of internally already understand the situation. And this was very much once we had the conceit and the concept, it was easy. Was, oh, there are two royal courts, or the one royal court going to visit this other like institution. Done. Makes sense.
But I think also there's this idea of I think if you don't take your characters so seriously, if you're not so wedded to them in their environment, but you really know them as a character, you can actually see them operating in different places. I also think what helped with our series is our sense of time in our series is oddly fluid. Like it's
Mhm.
hard to pinpoint a time period for Red Queen. I think it's very hard to pinpoint a time period for School for Good and Evil. So I think that gave us advantages.
It did. It did. And it also gave us advantages with knowing you're going to bring readers who have not touched Red Queen. I'm going to bring readers who have not touched School for Good and Evil. We have to make this accessible to both people. And especially when we have long series too, we want to have the hallmarks of each for people who haven't necessarily finished either. So for Red Queen, at least, the point that we chose that was kind of like our boundary was somewhere in book one, probably about halfway through. And
And
I
also
think
like
that was really the right choice.
yeah, and I think now we have the little bit of distance from it where look, there's over 20,000 people who've read Red School at this point, which is insane. That's more than like
Right.
some books. And so they what we've seen is that you can come at it completely fresh. You haven't have to read either series. And a lot of the people who come to it who are fans of Red Queen, for instance, will then go read School for Good and Evil, or this as a lot of School for Good and Evil younger fans will now graduate to Red Queen. So it
Yes.
became like kind of a gateway, and it is its own thing. Someone asks, any tips for pre-agent writers on social media? So meaning like you don't have a book, you're just starting. What would you say? Like, do you think it's important at that point, or do you think you come at it later?
I didn't have anything then, but this was also in 2013. I know it's not easy, but you will find the community, and people are very open to talking, especially writers who are pre-agent or who are querying or who are on submission, because it is such a lonely process. You instinctively reach out for other people who can understand. I would say it's not necessary. Like agents aren't deciding whether or not to represent your book based on your social media following.
It's a little bit like actors, right? There are a lot of people now who want to be actors who have like millions and millions of followers on TikTok. That doesn't mean they're going to end up being like Meryl Streep. Do you know what I mean? Like,
They
it,
won't be Meryl Streep, but they are all represented by CAA now.
I know. Welcome to the new world, which makes me ill. Okay, hold on.
A million
Uh,
followers is different from 500. If you
true.
have millions of followers, yes, it will
True.
be easier to get an agent, but that's not the easy way to get an agent.
Someone asks any advice. This is a good one too. Any advice for those who honestly stay off social media, meaning they don't want to be on social media. Like, is there another way to access fan? And I'm sure there are authors who are not on social media, right? Is like
Oh,
George R. R. Martin on social media?
they're the ones I can think of had a basis on social media and then left. I think you're absolutely within your rights to be like, I'm not personally going to be there, but I think it is valuable to have something to post updates, things that get people
Yes.
excited, because otherwise it's not like readers are going to Publishers Weekly and thumbing through and looking for new deal stuff. I would say that's valuable. You don't have to be involved to the level that a lot of people are involved. And I think a lot of people use Twitter as therapy, which is shitty. But
Well, I think then you kind of need a really good, you need a good website. Like you need like I think that's why like someone like George R. R. Martin, I'm sure is not posting on social media, but he has a
no,
great
but he
blog.
has a blog, and it's a very old
Yes.
blog. But
Yes,
that's a
yes.
good point, finding what works for you and what you naturally enjoy. And if you don't enjoy social media, that's going to read. Just use it for updates, use it to link, use it to connect people to what you are using.
100%. Someone asked, what is the, let's see.
I
Okay,
love
two
this
more
one.
questions. What is the most impactful thing a fan has ever done for you or in dedication to your work? Like what if you had to pick one thing that someone has done that really like still stays with you, what would it be?
I think when someone travels a long way, that to see you at a book event, that is incredible and really touching. Teachers too, when teachers bring classes or when they're like, I brought this for my one student who's the big reader, I'm like, oh, that was me. That was me. I know exactly who this kid is, and I know exactly how hard life is going to be for a little while. Um, yeah, when I meet those kids who I'm definitely like, oh, you are who I was when I was 15, and it's going to get a lot better.
I know. That's why I think the same thing whenever I see the like the very sensitive, skinny little boys who are reading The Wizard of Oz. I'm like, don't worry. One day you will be top of the heap. You are not now. You are very much. You're not there yet, but you will be. It will
I
take
always
time.
say what makes you weird now is going to make you successful later.
There was a School for Good and Evil wedding in Latvia. A girl did this whole like wedding theme to School for Good and Evil. I put pictures
Oh
on my
my God.
Instagram. I felt bad for the guy. Can you imagine the pressure of having to like play a prince? Like she literally dressed him up like a little
Oh,
prince. I know. I was like, oh, good luck
I
with
haven't
that
had any weddings.
marriage.
I've had like tattoos and pets
Tattoos. I
and
was gonna say you probably have had tattoos.
kids too. I'm like, oh, you really wanted to name a child after something I did? That's incredible.
Oh God. All right. Last question, and it's a good one. How do you think
Okay.
online fandom spaces and author-reader relationships are going to change in the next 10 years? Because they've changed so much in the
God.
last 10 years. This
Yeah.
is tricky.
Hopefully there's a little more grace both ways. I think authors are really dehumanized right now, and because of that, we kind of try and keep things at an arm's length because we don't know where we fit and we don't want to invade your space. We don't want to be told we don't belong. That's always what's really bothersome to me is when I'm in a fandom for something else, something that I'm not part of, and then I'm also told like you don't belong here because you're a creator. It's very strange and it feels very isolating, and it really sends you back to that being like the weird teenager who doesn't belong, and then to be told like this thing you love you can't be a part of. So I hate that, and I would hope there's a little more compassion on both sides in the next 10 years.
I almost think this is my prediction, and we'll see if it comes true. I think that the level of self-publishing and content by new writers, everything's going to become more and more accessible. There's going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lot more digital deals and things like that. So I think there's almost going to be two hierarchy. There's going to be a two tiers of writers, sort of like the ones who represent traditional publishings and the ones who don't.
I
And
see
then
that.
the question is how the traditional published authors use social media, and whether there's sort of a revolution between the two tiers. So I think
Mhm.
which should be interesting. That would be
Yeah,
my
I've seen a
my
little bit
kind
of
of
that. I've
guess.
seen a little bit of self-published authors, tweeting and saying like, "Hey, I'm outselling you," and it's like that's very
What?
rude.
Well, I feel like not to belabor a point we already made, but I just think sometimes people come at girls a lot more than they come at guys, which I think is ridiculous. I feel
What
like,
could have made you think that?
and no, but I just think it's terrible. Then again, if people came at me, you know what, I would just respond with a random emoji and be like, "I love you."
But you can because you're a guy. You could
I
also get away
know.
with being like, no, and that's what you just said is wrong, and what you just said is rude, and you should rethink your life.
Do you remember there was a period where a couple of people were coming after you for like random political stuff, and then I would literally like spend my day like responding to them because I was so mad, and finally I was
Well,
just like
the
frustrated.
political ones don't bother me so much anymore because they cannot be as bad as they used to be. They really haven't been. it's the stuff where it's coming from your own community and like readers, and you're like, oh, you're a real person. You're not like.
But look, to me, as long as they're reading it and doing that instead of playing Minecraft, we still got them. Love and hate are two horns on the same goat. So, as it was written in the help. So, all right, this was super fun. We have people telling us we need to get off the channel.
Yes.
Right now, because knowing you and I, we would take it over for the rest of the day.
Yep.
So anyway, thanks guys, and thanks Victoria. This was too much.
Thank
fun.
you, Soman.
I wish we could do this every week. All right, and those of you who ordered the Swan Gold tier of Red School will be scheduling your personal calls with me and Victoria in the next couple of weeks. So look for those. All right, see you guys soon. RedSchool.com is where you can get our graphic novel. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.